Keep pushing that boulder to the top of the hill. Welcome one and all to Suckville.
Extraordinary stories from ordinary humans? Yes, please. This is live from Suckville. I'm your host, Silva Florence, an expat, writer, cyclist, and podcaster, currently laid up in Suckville after losing my apartment in a flood. If you have ever ignored a feeling in your gut telling you to do something and done the other thing anyways, you're not alone. I've done that when I knew for many years that my relationship, my marriage wasn't working for me. And I ignored that feeling. And my guest today, Becky, did the same thing until a certain point when she decided to listen to her gut. And she made what might be considered a radical decision, which was to uncouple with her partner with love, with nothing but love, which is very difficult when you're unhappy and when you feel like you've been wronged. So are you ready to figure out how you can be empowered and how you can enrich your connection with yourself and your own body? I hope your answer is yes. All right. Hello, everybody in Suckville. Today, my guest is Becky Prokova, but her artist name is simply Bex. She's a singer-songwriter living in Victoria, British Columbia, and recording her first album. It's a collection of songs she wrote after her separation and is a representation of taking something really hard and turning it into a powerful transformation. Damn, woman. I want to listen to it already.
Me too. It sounds really exciting.
I know. I think because it is exciting.
I mean, I guess it sounds exciting for the listener, but for the person in it, it's kind of a fucking whirlwind.
I imagine that it's not easy to record and produce an album.
No, I mean, writing the songs was emotional and super healing. But yeah, producing the songs, recording the songs, that is like a different universe. It's a lot of fun though. Hey, you know what I was thinking, Sylv?
What's that?
Just a little icebreaker here.
Yeah, sure.
Try and say Irish wristwatch.
Irish wristwatch? Did I do it?
Wow, you did it. No one does it. That's amazing.
Really?
I want to get a mug and just have Irish wristwatch printed on it.
You did it
I
perfectly.
can't believe you just said it. I've been practicing.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing because do you remember how before the show I couldn't speak because my brain is fried from work?
Yeah. I have a fried brain and I can't even wrap my head around why. I just do.
Because you're recording an album, dude.
Yes, that's true. Oh, thank you for the reminder.
Oh, you're so welcome. Kind of interesting that you're recording this album right now because it's completely connected to the reason that you're on the show.
Yeah. So we meet in Italy. You tell me you have a podcast.
We need to talk about how we met because it's kind of awesome. Becky and I don't actually, well, okay, now we know each other, but we didn't know each other until I don't remember when that was.
Early October or late September?
Yes. So how did we meet, Becky?
We're in the small and romantic town of Arezzo, Italy, in Tuscany. It is a beautiful night. I'm feeling open to just about anything because I'm on vacation. And I walk up to this restaurant that seems like it's going to be great. And then I bump into you, Silva.
Hi.
But the restaurant was closed.
It hadn't opened yet. It was like 7 p.m., which is like really early dinner time for Italians. And so I had just gone in there and asked them can I sit down? And they're like, oh, we're going to open in like another 20 minutes. And I saw you guys thought I'll save them the torture of going in there to ask.
Yeah, and I just looked at you and I was like, "Well, do you want to grab a drink?" I don't even know how it happened, but I just like scooped you up and took you with us.
I said, heck yes, let's go have a drink. That sounds like a great plan. Started talking, and I don't remember what came up first, your conscious uncoupling, which is what we're going to talk about here, or the podcast. It's like the chicken and the egg. I don't really know, but
Yeah, I don't like to think about the chicken and the egg thing. It gets my brain overheated.
I guess we'll say that the conscious uncoupling came up first because that's what we want to get into. So, first of all, what is conscious uncoupling?
It can look differently for anybody, but in its essence, conscious uncoupling is choosing to move out of a relationship with somebody in a way that is loving, in a way that you are taking full responsibility for yourself, in a way that's empowering. Because often when you separate or when a long relationship ends, there's like a lot of like hatred involved or resentment or a sense of being a victim to what's happening to you.
Sure,
Like
sure.
people have this perspective like, oh, this is happening to me, or this person did this to me and it didn't work because they did this. That's a really common story. And the result is you just have a lot of hurting people out there who have unresolved feelings and just a lot of built up anger. And that's not a nice thing to live
Yeah,
with.
true.
Conscious uncoupling is the act of choosing love to walk away from that relationship, regardless of how much it hurts,
Yeah.
to let go and to know that this is your choice. Even if it wasn't, maybe originally it wasn't your choice. Like I said, it can look different for everybody. Maybe somebody really did you wrong. Somebody was unfaithful. Somebody was lying. Somebody walked away. Like, maybe you find yourself in a situation where your partner really abandoned you and hurt you. And that can be really hard to consciously uncouple from.
Do you think it's still possible for somebody like for a couple like that where one person is really wrong the other one?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally possible. And I'm fortunate enough that I didn't find myself in that scenario. Thank
Okay.
God. My former husband and I were both so, I'm going to use this word like 100 times in this episode, but we were both so conscious about it,
Yeah.
looking at each other and saying, this hurts like hell, but I think I think it's time we let each other go, and I love you and I'm sorry.
That's very different than a lot of breakups I've heard about.
Oh yeah. It's such a unique way of separating. It's not something we see often in our society, which is so unfortunate. And it's the reason why I wanted to actually do this podcast with you was because when I was in the beginning stages of this conscious uncoupling, I really struggled to find people that I could talk to about it with. I struggled to find podcasts to listen to. I just really struggled to find that support and those resources to be like to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Is there, let's say, series of things you're supposed to do when you're conscious uncoupling?
Yeah, I would recommend you start by buying the book by Catherine Woodward Thomas. She wrote the Conscious Uncoupling book. It's just called Conscious Uncoupling. I can't recommend the book enough. I mean, even if you're not going through a conscious uncoupling, or even if you and your partner separated like 20 years ago, just get the book and read it because it will help you reshape your relationship to relationships. It'll
Cool.
help you see
Cool.
relationships in a different way just to be able to like break out of the different boxes that we find ourselves in.
Can you kind of explain to me how you guys decided to separate in this way?
Well, it was 8 years essentially of us doing the work of trying to meet each other's needs and understand each other as it typically goes in a relationship, except we were unsuccessfully meeting each other's needs. We really just were butting heads so often in our relationship, and we were in therapy so regularly. We were doing all of the things, trying to figure out this partnership so that we can be happy so that we can feel ease.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was just such a sense of dis-ease in our relationship. And so after 8 years, we were just exhausted. And it was like we looked at each other and we couldn't think of anything else we could possibly do to figure it out.
So there was like a pretty specific moment that you remember that this happened?
No, I can't say that. I mean, there were many specific moments in the years where I had this voice in my head that was like, this is not the right relationship. You need to get out of this relationship.
I think a lot of us that have been in relationships that weren't working heard that voice, but then like kind of ignored it.
Because it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if you have a strong voice in your head and feeling in your body that is telling you you need to essentially blow up your life, of course you're going to ignore it.
Yeah, that's true because it's kind of easier to do the thing that you've always done because at least you know what that is like, right?
Exactly. And that's the other thing. We're so accustomed in this society to staying in situations that feel safe and predictable, even if they are incredibly unfulfilling. We
Yeah.
choose comfort over courage.
Mm.
I mean, as soon as I
Mm-hmm.
decided that I was just going to let go and release all sense of control, I really started to find myself and reclaim my authenticity and what is true to me. Because if you're staying in a situation that feels so stifling and that feels so wrong, but you're ignoring it, you're ignoring those feelings, I don't know how else to say it, but that is an act of self abandonment.
That's a good point.
I mean, you're denying yourself the life of your dreams, you're denying yourself the life you want to live.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty complex.
it is, but welcome to life.
Welcome to Suckville.
And also Suffield.
You're like, yeah, so I've got this podcast. It's about, being in Sackville. And it started because you broke your ankle, right?
My hip,
You
my
broke your
hip.
hip. Well, that's the thing is like Sackville can look like so many different things. Like you're in a long-term relationship that's just terrible for you, but as we said, there's comfort and familiarity, and so we stay. And so it's this like enduring of Suckville and just like sort of choosing that your life kind of sucks.
You're buying real estate in Suckville. You're not just renting.
Yeah, that's right. Like there's that version of Suckville, but then there's also another Suckville that's like it's like Suckville for a moment, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And the reason why I wanted to really get on here and talk about this is because in my conscious uncoupling, I was able to redefine my relationship to grief and sadness and anger and pain. I mean, all of those incredibly difficult feelings. I was able to actually give myself permission to really sit with them. When you allow yourself to embrace what is actually going on in your body and embrace the full spectrum of emotions, suddenly you start to realize that this is actually just what it means to be a human being. Like these aren't emotions or feelings that we should be avoiding. One thing that I'm still learning is that grief and joy can coexist. It's not one or the other. So I'm having a great day enjoying this incredible season of my life. I'm living in a beautiful home. I'm sitting by the fire. There's 40 centimeters of beautiful white snow outside. The list of things to be grateful for is endless. And yet, I also feel grief often. It comes up that I think about things from my previous life and have to take that time to sit with myself and cry and just feel it. I've noticed in my social circles and I've noticed in myself that if you take the time to be sad about something, it's almost like you perceive it as you're not being grateful for what you do have.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not the case. You can totally be really sad about something, and that doesn't mean that you're not also really grateful for everything else and even for that thing that you're sad about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't think a lot of people would think that you could be grateful about being sad. And what does that look like to you? Like giving yourself permission and and giving yourself time.
I mean, it can be as simple as putting your hand on your chest while you are making your morning coffee or brushing your teeth. I mean, literally at any moment in the day, if a feeling comes over you and it's habitual for you to sort of brush it off because it's an inconvenient time, perhaps a good place to start is, instead of brushing away that uncomfortable feeling, put your hand on your chest, in the center of your chest, and close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath in and just take one moment to show yourself compassion. And that act in itself is so powerful. That is you slowly building a bridge back to yourself.
Absolutely. That's a great suggestion.
Because when we keep like pushing difficult feelings aside because it's not the right time, we're essentially separating ourself from our soul, which is it's kind of a spiritual concept, but we separate ourselves from things that are hard, and so therefore you're split. And if you're splitting yourself up, we need to slowly start building bridges to create cohesion within the self so that we are safe to explore every part of ourself.
We're not really taught to embrace hard emotions.
Well, let me tell you a story.
Tell me a story,
I'm gonna
Becky.
tell you a
Tell me a
story,
story.
Silva. Because I'm talking to you now from this like place of wisdom, because I've spent the last 3 years like sitting in some really, really hard emotions. And I can have this conversation with you now and I feel pretty solid in what I'm saying. But 3 years ago, like, a lot of this would just kind of feel inaccessible to me. I remember we were sitting with a therapist. I will never forget. I was sitting on her couch in her living room space. She worked from home and she was sitting on the chair across from me. The only thing I cared about was making the marriage work. It was like life or death. I didn't care about anything else. All I cared about was the marriage has to stay together, because
Mm,
in my body, I could not even allow myself to consider what life would look like without him. Like, I couldn't even allow myself to daydream about that possibility because it was too painful.
too painful in a sense that like it was too scary.
It's layers, layers upon layers upon layers of discomfort. Like, I have placed my identity in the role of being a wife. I have placed my value, my sense of value, in the role of being a wife. You know how much value I started to feel in myself when he proposed to me?
Hmm.
And I had that diamond ring on my finger, and I would fixate on this ring all the time, even throughout the marriage. I felt a sense of like, well, at least I'm chosen. Well, at least I'm married. Well, even though like, this clearly isn't right and we're like falling apart, this ring gave me a sense of like value still. And then on top of that,
Yeah.
I changed my name. And I remember writing my name, my new last name, over and over and over and over again in cursive writing, like I'm a kid in elementary school. Did you ever do that?
Oh yeah.
But what I was doing in those years was like really identifying with the importance of being married and in the value of being his wife. And so for
Mm-hmm.
this world to suddenly come apart, that would mean like, well, who am I then?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I take this ring off, and if this man's not my husband, then where's my value? Who am I?
Yeah. I can relate to that a bit because as you know, I'm also divorced. There was definitely a point where I remember thinking, I don't really remember like what it's like to be not part of a couple because we were together for like 11 years. I'm a
Mm,
very independent person, but I was strangely like afraid of doing everything for a while. Of course, I did it anyways,
yeah,
but I'm like,
totally.
who is this person that's like afraid of opening her own bank account
Yeah, exactly. Well, basic life shit, right?
that you've just been doing with someone else for like a decade, like you said? You were telling me the story of when you were on this sofa.
Yes, thank you for bringing me back there because I was about to go completely away from that story. I'm talking about, first of all, it's like giving yourself permission to feel things, right? And what does that actually look like? And so for me, years ago, it was like I wouldn't allow myself to consider an option that was uncomfortable and painful, heartbreaking. I was afraid of what that would feel like and what that I didn't want to. And I remember I was sitting in this therapy room and this woman, and she goes, "What do you think's going to happen to you if you guys divorce? What are you going to fall over and you're going to go to the emergency and ambulance is going to have to come and pick you up? What do you think, you're going to roll over and die?" And I remember like feeling so taken aback because it was so insensitive of her to
Yeah, right.
approach it in that way. Because of course I knew I'm not going to die, but I don't know. It's not really rational, but it just kind of feels like my life will be in pieces and I don't think I can handle that.
You just think like, where do I even start? Like, what do I even do first?
Girl, we're talking about the layers of complexity. After I got married, like one of the first things I did, this is kind of embarrassing. One of the first things I did was
Now I'm can't wait to hear it.
I went on Instagram and I changed my status or that little bio on Instagram. I
Yeah.
changed it to something something trophy wife with a little trophy emoji. And then I went, yeah. And then I
Uh,
went into my
then
contacts and I changed his name to husband. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. But what I was trying to do was like, I wanted everyone, but not just everyone. I wanted Becky, little Becky, current Becky. I wanted all of me to like fully comprehend, like, you hit the jackpot, you made it, life is good, everything's fine. Like there was no more like personal work for me to do. But then there's also like our societal conditioning around marriage. And, there's a lot of shame associated to people who get divorced.
yeah, it's true.
There's a huge perception that when a couple divorces, they failed. The amount of people that have said in passing, like, oh, your marriage failed, but this, and this. Every time I hear that, I have to correct the person. And I'm like, listen, my marriage ending was not a failure. If anything, I see it as a massive success story. And I think the success of a relationship isn't defined by how much time you can withstand together, but rather how much truth can you stand in together. Because if you can look at your partner and speak the truth, which maybe your truth is, I can't be in this relationship anymore, that is bloody painful and liberating
Hmm.
and scary. But if you can do it, I mean, to me, that's success. I mean, like, I don't want to be the person that's like, hey, if you can't be in the relationship, just say it. Like, I believe you should try your very best. Don't just like walk away because it's hard.
Yeah.
But I think at a certain point, people like know deep in their guts, in their body, when they've outgrown a relationship.
Yeah, I think that's really true. So I want to go back to the conscious uncoupling process after you guys decided there was nothing, that you tried everything. What happened next?
It was May of 2021. Right away, we ordered the Conscious Uncoupling book. We decided we can take this at our own pace. We decided that we were going to spend the summer still living together and reading the book together, which was really good for him and really, really hard for me, really not good for me.
Why?
For me, I felt like a sense every night going to bed with him because we slept in the same bed. We weren't sleeping together. We stopped kissing on the lips, but we were still very cuddly. I would lay in his arms every night still, like I had been for the previous 8 years. And I would just cry in his arms for like 3 months. I remember saying things like, this is one of the last nights we'll ever sleep together. And for me, it was like dragging it out. I remember in August, I was just like, okay, this has to be done now. This is like painful. I need you to like move out because I'm actually not able to fully process this and accept it. the way I need to. Our lives looked very much the same, except we were reading this book and we were no longer kissing on the lips. It was like,
That would be strange for sure.
yeah, it was tough. So I spent a good 3 full months in complete shock or being in, I wasn't even trying to move out of it because, that defeats the purpose of just being with what is.
Then how did the conscious uncoupling like keep unfolding?
Well, the conscious uncoupling is an agreement of letting each other go. For us personally, our conscious uncoupling was to let each other go in love. So lots of apologies were made on both sides. It was like all of a sudden, all the resentment and anger over the last 7 to 8 years disappeared. And suddenly it was just a season of crying together, apologizing to each other, and showing each other nothing but love.
Did you ever have a moment where you're like, what are we doing? Like everything seems better.
It's confusing for sure. There were many moments where I was like, I love this person so much and he loves me so much. And here we are, just crying and crying together. Maybe we should get back together because, I'm clawing back to that familiarity. But you have to remember the dynamic of the relationship. I mean, I had to remember truly our marital dynamic and how it just did not serve me. And so it was only in this space of letting each other go that we could embrace each other with just full love and acceptance. And I had to stay and still have to stay really strong in my decision. I needed to fully let go of that relationship to reclaim my sense of value, my sense of wholeness, my sense of individuality, my sense of power.
And you said you still have to stay strong in that decision. Like, do you still think sometimes, what if?
I mean, definitely there are moments that come up and I feel like, he's family. So what we have chosen to do and what feels good for both of us, even though it's uncomfortable and challenging, is to be able to still stay really close friends. We want to be in each other's lives for as long as we both shall live. Still sort of like we talked about that the other day. I was like, it's kind of cool. We made those vows and it's like we're still kind of honoring those vows even though they look a little different.
Sure.
Why not give yourself the permission to rewrite the script a little bit? Like you still can love somebody till death do you part. It just may look a little differently than what you originally planned. But if he ever has kids one day, I hope to one day be like an aunt figure to his kids and vice versa. Like I really want to lean into what's possible for us. Who cares how difficult it is to get there? Who cares about what other people will say around you? Oh, that's weird, or oh, but you guys were married. Ignore all of that shit and just check in with yourself and what do you feel is possible and what does your former partner feel is possible? And for us, we can look at each other and honestly say after everything we've been through, I believe it is possible for us to stay family for the rest of our lives.
That's cool.
Let's blow up all of these friggin' boxes that say relationship has to look like this or that. And let's just do like I don't know how else to say it, but I mean there's such a gray area there to be explored.
Agreed.
I mean, I think the point that I really want to drive home is just the fact that it's not always easy, and that's okay. Sometimes the decision that's right for you is the hardest decision that you have to make, and that's okay.
Aside from the book that you recommended earlier, which I think is great, do you have any other advice for somebody that might be considering trying to separate with somebody in this very difficult but loving manner?
I would suggest looking into somatic therapy. It really helped me. I might be butchering this definition of somatic therapy, but basically it's the practice of being able to identify the sensations in your body
Mm-hmm.
and find a place of safety and security in your body. Life is a roller coaster. all of these emotions that we feel are accompanied by a lot of sensation in the body. So if you can find yourself in a situation where you're developing the practice of being able to identify and recognize what's coming up in your body, like sweaty armpits or a racing heart or whatever, there's like
Mhm.
just pay attention to what's happening in your body.
That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah. That's an empowering practice.
How long did you do this kind of therapy for? And did you do it at the same time that you were doing the conscious uncoupling?
Yeah, pretty much that summer when I was experiencing all the shock. I was also in somatic therapy, and I did it for a few months, less than 6 months. But the practice of it, I have applied to my everyday life now. You know, just any moment in the day where I can pause and be with myself is huge, and it's not something that I typically did before in the past.
The new and improved Becky. Becky 2.0.
Because we're like just so we're so often as a society like living in our head space, thinking and intellectualizing and making meaning,
We're a very rational society for sure.
but also incredibly irrational. Because the mind is racing and making up so many stories about things that the next thing you know, it's like a web of shit. And you're like, I can't see up from down right now. I can't see right from wrong. I can't see anything. So it's like that process of like moving from your head into your heart, into the feeling of your body is a game changer.
Actually, like whenever I have some weird pain or something or headache, I intuitively started to tune into my body. Maybe because I'm very athletic and I depend on my body a lot for what I want to do. I will actually ask it what it wants to tell me. And this will sound totally, absolutely crazy, but a lot of the time I will get an answer. Maybe there's some sort of a fear or something that I was not looking at or an anxiety, and it will go away.
That's crazy. I believe that. So when you say like you ask it, well, what does that look like when you say you ask your body?
Actually, like kind of addressing it, giving my attention to that part of my body, and then saying, what is it that you're trying to tell me? And then having a really open mind and kind of just letting whatever answer come to you, a sensation or even a thought, a word, something.
And you just did that intuitively.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like when I got divorced, I rode my bicycle across the United States on my own. And that was one big, long tuning into myself and my body.
That is so awesome, Silva.
Thank you.
I mean, that's huge. That's a huge part of it. Like, I talked about go see a somatic therapist, but if you don't and if you can't or whatever, like just go do something
Ride
that
your bike
gets
across the United
ride
States.
your bike across the country, but get in your body, like go work out, do seven jumping jacks. That's not very many.
Or 7, if that's all you can do, that's cool too.
I just want to circle back to something because I don't think we completed the thought on it, and I don't know for anybody who is listening to this who maybe can relate to what I said earlier about the hypothetical scenario of being wronged, of being abandoned. If that's the place that you're in, and maybe your former partner is not a conscious being, would never be open to something like this, is, a real son of a gun. I can't personally speak to that experience because that's not the experience that I had, but I just want to say for those people, it still is incredibly possible to move through a conscious uncoupling so that you may find your freedom and your liberation.
You're saying, like, even if your partner would not be into this kind of thing, you could work through it on your own.
100%
Cool. Self-healing.
self healing in Suckville.
How to not buy property in Suckville. Yeah.
Exactly. Something really important just came to mind.
Tell me. Tell me.
Some things that really got me through it. I'm serious. This was big for me. I found paper in my apartment, any scrap paper. It was like shitty brown paper. I wrote out a couple of quotes that were really empowering and inspiring to me, and I taped them on my bedroom wall. And I had like personal mantras to get me through many of the months, like a full year of reading those mantras. And those mantras are in my heart. I think about them all the time. One of them is let yourself surprise yourself. It doesn't roll off the tongue very nicely, but
Kind of like Irish wristwatch.
this is full circle. No, but seriously, if you want a crazy life transformation and you want to show up in a different, more empowered way, you have to stop thinking that you know how you're going to react to something in the future because you're just projecting an old
That's
version of
true.
yourself into the future.
Amen, girl.
Let yourself be surprised. That is such a big part of it.
Well, I've very much enjoyed this chat, and I learned a lot about a topic that I didn't really know anything about, and something that I feel like is a very fresh way to look at splitting up. Thanks for this.
Thank you, Silva. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. It's healing for me to revisit.
I think they're going to learn from you that no matter where they are in this process of separating, that it's possible to get to a place of being able to talk about it with complete calm and joy.
Yes,
There is hope in Suckville.
absolutely.
Make sure you don't miss an episode by signing up for the Suckville email community. Just go to livefromsuckville.godaddysites.com. On that same handy page, you can leave me a voice message using SpeakPipe to answer any questions from the show, leave feedback, or thank someone. A special thanks to all my guests and to Chris Kirby for the amazing theme music. This episode was recorded in my kitchen and produced by yours truly. Until next time.